In Fallout 4, a huge amount of world building is delivered through terminals, nodes, and those tiny environmental details Bethesda loves to hide in plain sight. These little stories often talk about the past and let us sink deeper into the setting. Today, we'll go through a few short stories you might have missed. At Rib Marina, you can stumble onto one brief and incredibly stupid tragedy. Inside the hangars, you're immediately greeted by a Mr. Handy, who calls you Eugene and asks you to follow him. Then, together with another robot, they start congratulating Eugene on his birthday, and as soon as the party ends, they attack, spinning up saws and flamers like it's just another maintenance routine. Near the spot where the robot meets you, there is a terminal with Eugene's diary. Walk a little further, past the celebration area, and you can find a second terminal, Malcolm's personal journal. Both terminals explain that two brothers arrived at the marina on the same day. Outside was dangerous, high radiation levels and total chaos, so they decided to leave the Commonwealth behind. As they both ride, family is supposed to stick together, and to make that happen they start repairing two yachts. After roughly 20 days, the cracks appear. Eugene starts getting furious that Malcolm drinks his coffee too loudly, slurping every sip. Malcolm in turn is driven mad by Eugene's little notes left everywhere. They can't even agree on where to sail. As becomes clear later, Eugene wants to go south, while Malcolm insists on heading north. The split forces them to divide their supplies, and they no longer have enough spare parts to finish repairing two boats. By day 45, both brothers decide to surprise each other by hacking the Mr. Handys. Day 46 is their shared birthday. They each issue commands to the robots that should deliver congratulations and then attack the other brother. Both men die as a result. Eugene's skeleton is in the dining area where the Mr. Handy leads you, and nearby you can find a copy of Tesla Science magazine. Malcolm's remains are outside, near one of the sheds. In a half-open coffin with face on top, you can clearly see what's most likely left of Malcolm, which suggests Eugene's gift hit first, and then he waited for a little while for his brother's present to arrive. Radiation experiments always end with ugly consequences. Research assistant Peters was truly devoted to her work. The abandoned house is an unmarked location not far from Bunker Hill. Out front, you'll find a couple of skeletons, several dead ghouls and one sleeping. Inside the house are three holotapes titled Test Subject Recording, telling us what happened to Assistant Peters. 8 months before the war, she volunteered for an experiment testing a new anti-radiation serum. The first holotape is her third entry, where Peters describes her miserable condition. Her exposure dose has reached 2 sieverts. She has constant pain in the parietal and frontal lobes, accompanied by severe nausea and vomiting, on average 3 to 6 times per 12 hours. She can no longer eat solid food, reporting intense abdominal pain, diarrhea, bleeding gums, overall weakness, and possible internal bleeding. Peter admits she has never felt so terrible in her life, and she often thinks about ending the trial, but she calms herself with the thought that in a couple of days her dose will reach 6 sieverts. Her contract will be renewed. She will receive the serum, and the product will go to the market, saving lives. The second holotape is her 6th entry. Measurements confirm she has successfully reached 6 sieverts of exposure, and all previous symptoms remain. On top of that, tissue damage begins with signs of necrosis. She's losing fluids rapidly because of fever and starts taking antibiotics to fight infection. Finally, she manages to inject the long-awaited dose of the serum, and the recording cuts off. In the last entry, she no longer sounds like a scientist running a test. Exhausted and drained, she says she took a second dose of serum a few hours ago, but nothing happened. Necrosis has reached her mouth. She's going bald and her teeth are falling out. She contacts the lab to stop the experiment, saying she needs a doctor. The lab orders her to remain in quarantine until the research is finished. Her fate becomes obvious, and she accepts it. Peters makes one final request. She asks a certain Dr. Roberts to pass her final goodbye to her family, saying that she loves them and asks not to be buried. And that's where the recordings end. Eventually, the serum had no effect. It's possible she was given a placebo, but there is no information confirming that. Perhaps the medicine itself didn't work at all. Upstairs, you can find a glowing ghoul that has been locked in the house for 200 years. Her message to her parents was almost certainly never delivered, especially considering that the lab never sent anyone to help. If you visit Big John's salvage, you can find a seemingly ordinary house nearby. The building stands out among mountains of scrap. On the second floor, you'll find John Miller's terminal with 3 entries. The salvage yard is currently a super mutant outpost and can be rough to clear. Before the war, John Miller's family was made up of John himself, his wife and 2 sons. Driven by pure instinct and without money, John decides to build his own fallout shelter. He buries a trailer completely underground and covers it with train carriage on top. As the terminal makes clear, John initially ran all the necessary pipes into the shelter, but didn't check the ventilation. He also wasn't sure whether the kids should even know the shelter exists. Later, he does sort out the ventilation, but then another problem appears. The generator could shut off on its own, which would create a vacuum in the shelter and seal the hatch, making it impossible to be opened. In his last entry, he says all supplies have been stocked. The generator and ventilation issues are solved. For his kids, 5 and 7 years old, he invents a little rhyme, so they can find the shelter in an emergency. In the tipped-over train behind that shop, climb up above and drop in the top. To access the shelter, you need to find a generator in one of the alleys on the salvage lot and flip the switch. Then, following the cables, you can reach the shelter and open the hatch, which you cannot do without an active power source. Inside, you won't find any supplies. The shelter is in terrible shape, but on one of the shelves there is a nail gun. On a mattress nearby, you can find a pair of skeletons hugging each other, and 2 small graves with a baseball glove and a teddy bear nearby. The location can also be discovered by listening to the Miller's family radio signal, where the father begs anyone for help. Eventually, the generator failed, shutting down the ventilation and creating a vacuum, literally sealing the Miller's family inside. John, barely hanging on, pleaded for help as the oxygen ran lower and lower. It seems he had time to say goodbye to his sons and wife, hugging her one last time, and then follows his family into the dark. At the Vault-Tec regional headquarters, you can find a petty little story. In the terminal of the local manager Frank Davidson, there is an entry dated as 10:03. He complains that a woman named Sharon spilled coffee on his suit in the lounge. Everyone probably laughed it off and moved on, but Frank, like some kind of psycho, writes that if she does it again, he'll stab her in the neck with a pen, while also writing that she's a good kid. In Walter Scott's terminal, in an entry dated 10/19th, you learn that Sharon has been missing for several days, and nobody knows where she is. Everyone misses her, including Walter, because she genuinely made his workdays shine. By now, it's obvious something went wrong with Sharon. In the basement, behind shelves, you can find a skeleton in Vault-Tec lab coat, with a pen lodged near the neck. The mystery is solved. Frank is a petty psychopath who murdered an employee over spilled coffee. Frank's story continues in other terminals. When he was playing pool, an employee named Roger got too close to Frank, so Frank smashed a cue over his head, causing long-term hearing loss and fear among the staff. Also, in the same lounge area, inside one of the plastic pumpkins, you can find rat poison left by someone as a snack for the employees. To piece together the last story, you'll need to visit the Boston Police rationing site. A couple of basketball courts and a warehouse next to the railroad were temporarily occupied by police before the war, so they could hand out rations and other essentials to people in need. Many items, and food especially, were highly valuable on the market, with hunger riots and unemployment on the rise. Shifts were monitored jointly by the army and the police. Sergeant Rice and Detective Francis Perry were assigned to the job. Yet, even the combined efforts of 2 agencies couldn't stop theft and shortages. Some people were robbing elderly women who came for medicine as soon as they leave the site. Others tried to bribe the guards for better supplies in larger quantities, but neither group was responsible for the missing stock. Sergeant Rice and Detective Perry were in collusion and simply hid supplies in utility rooms between the warehouse and the turnpike tunnels. In fact, they were old friends and both shamelessly sold the stolen goods on the black market with the help from Perry's cousin Jack. Meanwhile, Perry's partner, Detective McDonald, starts investigating the missing Russians, but soldiers controlled by Rice won't let him into the warehouse. Driven by paranoia, the sergeant orders his men to arrest McDonald if he comes near the warehouse again. McDonald, unaware of the conspiracy between Rice and Perry, lights the spark that will end their scheme. From his holotape left in a trailer by the warehouse, you learn McDonald asked Perry to sleep inside and look into Rice's business, never suspecting they were working together. In the tunnels under the site, you can find the skeletons of Rice and Perry, along with 2 holotapes that finish their story. Rice grows more and more irritated because of McDonald's investigation, and just like McDonald, he starts pressuring Perry to shut the investigation down. A holotape recorded by Perry is addressed to Jack, who was supposed to move at least half of the stolen goods by the time of the recording. Perry complains about McDonald breathing down his neck and says he wants to run with the loot before Rice realizes it's gone. And at that exact moment, someone else appears off camera, startling Perry, and the recording cuts off. Most likely, Rice caught Perry and overheard his message to his cousin. Disappointed in his friend, he reveals himself, and they attack each other, bringing the Russian thefts to an end. What happened to Jack, the supplies, and McDonald is never explained, leaving the end of the story unresolved. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button. See you next time.